My name is Louise Page, and I'm from Highwire Press. And like Adapon, we've been in this business for a long time. We have been around before Google, and so as Google came into position and its might and its force and its presence and its power became known, we were, as with Adapon, one of the first ones to help them develop what they were doing, to help them develop the scholarly article protocols, help them develop how best to index the content. And so our journals were some of the first to be indexed. They were the ones that that Google helped us identify how to optimize. And so what I'm going to go through here is taking all the ingredients that Darcy has said are necessary for optimized Google ranking and Google indexing, and saying this is how Highwire does it. This is how we particularly bake this cake. There are a couple of variations on the theme that we have found have been particularly successful. And so these are things that I don't think we actually really talk about outside of the Highwire walls. So keep that in mind. So how important is Google to our publishers? For our publishers, Google and Google Scholar rank at about 50% of the traffic. For some journals, specifically some of the little ones, they can be as much as 90% of the traffic. It is very significant. For even our biggest, what I call our monoliths, our biggest publishers, they are still ranking in the 40 to 60%. So this is not traffic to be ignored. And so if you're talking about being unindexed or thinking about being unindexed or even contemplating the option of being unindexed, think about how long it'll take to get that traffic back and how that will hurt during that period of time. Because it isn't just about, nagging Google to get it done faster and trying to make it happen faster. It's also wielding yourself and armoring yourself against all of those phone calls and all of those publisher complaints. Because while our customers at Highwire, our customers are our publishers, and our publishers really care about this. But for Google and Google Scholar, what they're listening to are the users. And they're similar, but we're a little bit one removed. And so our publishers like to think that we are the ones that are keeping an eye out on this for them, so that they don't get those complaints, that Google doesn't get those complaints, and that unfortunately that red slice of your pie goes away. So what are the rules for staying indexed? I'm just going to boil them down for you because these are the ones that we keep in mind. Don't change it. Don't change the URL structure. And this is while your site's live. It's puttering along, it's humming along nicely. Don't change the domain, don't change the URL structure, don't add session IDs in there, don't add something dynamic in there. Don't introduce cloaking at the interstitial pages. No content farms. And so this is the idea where you have content and you've said, oh, I'm also going to create this other product with this content. It's going to have a new URL. Well, that's considered a content farm. We've all seen that in the cases of where publishers have seen people scrape their sites and then they're over in China or they're over in another country and you can get the full text there. Those places get shut down eventually, but they certainly don't get indexed by Google. So what's Highwire's standard operating procedure? This is just standard basic stuff. We have an open dialogue with the search engines, with Google, with all the major search engines. We have this often, and we have this openly and freely. We keep them updated. And similarly, in return, they keep us updated, which is helpful. As Kevin says, it's good to know when you're going to be unindexed, to know that you have broken the rules and you are now on a list. And so you have a chance to fight back and to take yourself off the list. It doesn't always happen 100% of the time, but when it does happen, act quickly. But keeping that dialogue open means that the search engines will keep you informed as well. Darcy mentioned the meta tags and how important they are. Highwire has developed a set of meta tags, which you all can see, that are particularly tuned in a way that Google takes notice when they see these meta tags. So these are tags that you guys can use as well in terms of their format. They're not Dublin Core, they're a specific kind of format. And Google, in fact, will say in their presentations, maybe just to Highwire publishers, but they call them the Highwire tags. And they're structured in such a way so that they optimize the rankings, they optimize the indexing, they get Google's attention. The URLs are predictable, they're stable, they're crawlable. Okay, they do not have session IDs, they do not have dynamic information in them, they don't change in the course of time. It's very important to Google that they stay where they are and they stay in the same format. We use sitemaps, in other words, as Darcy was saying, to make sure that the crawlers can find their way through. This is probably more true for Google Scholar than it is for Google, but we still do have them available. And we have them available in different ways, not just our archive pages, as Darcy showed you, but also with other kinds of sitemaps. We do 403 redirects, which basically says this URL no longer exists, so that we can make sure that those things sweep off of the Google index. And then what I call the WYSIWYG, that what Google sees is what the user is getting. And as Kevin very clearly showed you, except when there's an abstract and then when there was an extract. And so what happened is that when we first started getting indexed by Google, extracts were a possibility. We actually negotiated that with Google, saying that, okay, well, these editorials, these review articles, these letters, these whatevers, they don't have author-written abstracts. So what do we do about this? And they said, well, we still want that content, but it has to have some short snippet. So we created the extract. It's been dynamically generated for years. Recently, that rule changed. And so extracts are no longer, as Kevin said, a reliable and acceptable version for the Google user. So the first page free, as you've seen, and the first click free are both options available at Highwire. And so the first click free is something we introduced maybe about a year ago. And the trick there is that it is a backdoor. So you can get the content from Google for free. Go back to Google, get another piece of content. And but it is something that our publishers feel is a risk worth taking for that traffic. To not be unindexed is worth it. In addition, we have the no index. So in other words, if there is a particular type of content that you don't want to create, you don't have an abstract for, you don't want to give away the first page because maybe it's that long. We have some journals where every article is a sentence. Or you have a whole section of news that, you know what, we're just not going to give that away for free. So we have a no index section. You can say that. You can say this particular section I'm not going to have index, and no follow. So we may have a page of a page with collections on them or a page of information, but you don't want Google to follow the links. You can also have that as well, and you can have that by section. Now, you have to break the rules sometimes. There are reasons to do it, and I'm just going to talk about a couple of them, including the point of all this, which is about transitions. So when Highwire embarked on its migration to its new platform a few years ago, it's called the H2O platform, we needed to move 1,600 journals and 6 million articles over the course of a few years. I was going to say a couple years, but it was really more like a few years. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of content, and we kept Google in the loop the entire time. And one of the things that we told them is that we want to do this. We want to migrate all this content with no loss of ranking and or traffic to our publishers along the way. And this is a massive undertaking because it was done in such a short period of time. It's one thing to move one journal, to move one publisher, but this is a massive amount of content. And so what are the steps we took? As I mentioned, we have an open dialogue with Google. And, Darcy is an unbelievable resource, as is Anurag, as are other people at Google, to us in helping to make sure that we are not going to inadvertently do something wrong. So we open that dialogue and we keep them updated. And not just with Google. We do this with all the other search engines. They just don't seem to have as many persnickety rules. And they don't represent 50% of our traffic. That's actually the big deal. In the Highwire migration, we made sure the domains did not change because that was obviously one rule we didn't want to break. But we did change the URLs. And at first, Anurag said, please don't do that. Please don't change the URLs. Well, it's our business, and it was something we had to do, a decision that we made. So what we did is that, just like our old rules, we made sure that the new standard was stable and that we created redirects, as Darcy and Kevin have detailed for you very clearly. Redirects are the key to the kingdom. But the other thing that we did, because it was our migration, is we are making sure that those old URLs are supported in perpetuity, not for 1 year, in perpetuity. Those old URLs will be around. That mapping will be around in perpetuity. And then we also made sure that the respidering was quick. Now, while the redirects are in place, things will still work. Things will still stay indexed over at Google. But they do still need to respider. And so I'm going to actually touch on that in a second. So what our results were is that the migration is just about complete. We have one publisher that is left to go. And no journal was unindexed. There was some variation on how long it took for the search engines to display the new search results, the cached URL thing, but it didn't matter because the redirects were in place, and there were no performance problems during the respidering. Now, this is a big deal. When you change 25% of your site, the spiders will come back. And they will want to re-index everything. This is my least favorite slide of anything I've ever done. Even looking for this slide was upsetting to me. I stood away from my computer like this. So anyway, you need to prepare for this, okay? Because if all of a sudden all the spiders come back to recrawl your content, they're going to slow things down. And you're going to have a performance issue for months. And so what we did is that we looked at our spiders, and there are lots of them out there that want to crawl your content. And not all spiders are created equal. Some of them are kind of goofy. Some of them just don't give you the return that you're looking for. Some of them are just not Google. They're not Microsoft. It's just not worth it. Oh, no, it's spiders, not apiders. Sorry. But the point is that what we did is that we actually reviewed the spider traffic that we have, the bot traffic, and we said, these are the ones that are worth paying attention to. And we stopped the others. And so we basically put the spiders in line. And we told them this. And we told the ones that needed to wait, you need to wait. And so we let Google in first. We let Yahoo in first. We let so on and so forth, Microsoft in. We let them in a particular order in order to make sure that the performance of the site stayed up and stayed strong throughout. Then, of course, there are new Highwire publishers, new publishers that come to Highwire. And again, they have similar goals. They don't want to lose their traffic. They don't want to lose their ranking. And in these cases, that's a little different for Highwire because we don't have control over the original site. And so the steps are very similar with a few exceptions. So we have the open dialogue. We let Google know. Google knows who's going where, that kind of thing. The domains do not change when we can avoid this. Not every publisher can avoid this. And so if that's true that the domain has to change, then of course the redirects have to go in place. Again, the new standard stable URLs go into place. The old URLs are supported in perpetuity when we can. For the most part, that's not possible. Those publishers don't want to keep those URLs around forever. There is a 6-month recommendation from the UK Council, but unfortunately that doesn't always stick either. So we try to keep it around for as long as we can. We try for the 6-month minimum. I know Darcy wants a year. We can't always have it because it's just not in our control. But when we are the ones who had the site that did transition off of Highwire, we will keep those URLs in place for as long as the publishers ask us to. We do suggest, but we don't require this, that our publishers who have moved on to Highwire, that they remove access control at launch. Just give it a couple of months to shake out. Don't introduce that extra layer at the very beginning. They don't always. Some of them want to have that free trial period, but some of them, just for business reasons, don't want to. And again, the quick respider because of those URLs that have changed. Now, the trick here with the respider for new publishers that we do is that we've worked out a way with Google that they will index the most valuable content first. They re-index scholarly articles first, not your about the journal pages, not your information to author pages. They will go for that high value content first, and that maximizes your results and makes sure your ranking stays strong from the very beginning. Stuck. Okay. And so again, the results have been that no journals have been unindexed as a result of transitioning to the Highwire platform because of a transition. There have been reasons why they've been unindexed for other reasons. Again, there's been variation on how long it takes. And then what they have found is that when they've moved to the Highwire platform, that the ranking has improved. Again, because of all these things that we do in order to optimize the indexing, making sure that the content's getting to Google very quickly, very rapidly. There are transitions that happen where if the content, the redirects and everything, that all is working, but unfortunately the current content is breaking the rules, Google stops indexing. Okay, the other stuff may be in there, but the current content is not being indexed, that's death. A lot of publishers will consider that to be death. The Highwire result can rank higher than the dual-hosted version of the journal. So we have some situations where our publishers publish in two places. The institutional version may be at a commercial publisher, and the individual version may be at Highwire. And in fact, our ranking goes higher than even those institutional versions. So the third layer of what Highwire does is that we certainly want to keep our publishers indexed. Once they're at Highwire, once they're happy, once they're indexed by Google, things don't stay the same every day. There are going to be changing business rules. You want to change the way access control works. You want to change the way that the content, you want to introduce a new content type. You want to introduce news content, editorial content, podcast type content. You want to introduce new products and content packages because that's, this is the new wave, is that you want to be able to repackage your content, serve it up to different kinds of users, message to them separately, and all of those things. You don't want to look like a content farm. You don't want to look like you're cloaking. And then add to all of that Google is also changing its indexing rules. It's changing, what it considers to be valid. And so just as we saw with extracts no longer being the solution du jour, we had to come up with something else. And we've had to develop along the way new solutions and new ways for our content to stay indexed. Because that's, again, very vital. We don't want to lose 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 9 months of traffic. So what is our healthy web for discovery is that we make sure we communicate frequently. This is a really big deal for us. We have very good communication with Google and Google Scholar, and they keep us in the loop when things are changing. They keep us in the loop when we're at risk, when a publisher is at risk. And we've had publishers have been told, you are going to be unindexed. And they said, talk to the hand. And that's what they said to Google, and they were okay with that. But they knew ahead of time. The ones that get surprised, there's a lot of angst, and there's a lot of ruffling. And there are reasons why some of our publishers have been unindexed by Google. But because of our communication and because of some of the ways that we index to make it faster, we can shorten the time that people are unindexed. We discuss our options with Google and with the search engines because there are many of them. We don't just take the rule and then say, okay, we're going to just fold over. We have lots of different ways that we can overcome them, and we make sure that the ones that we come up with are effective when we respond to them with Google and with the other search engines. We maintain consistency. It's really important you don't keep changing things around. Changing brand is just not as easy as just, I'll just change that, and by the way, I'm going to change the URL or the domain. That is something you have to make sure you keep in the loop. And always keep in mind that change happens, either at yourselves, at the publisher, at Google, and the platforms and Highwire, Adapon, and such. We make sure that all of that is something we keep in mind. We support you, and we make sure that you stay indexed. Thank you.